Welcome to Rocket Ship, the home of epic React Native content. I'm Simon Grimm, creator of Galaxies.dev, and today's guest is Gant Laborde, who I met at the last App.js. We could probably cover all topics in the universe today. We will try to stick to React Native mostly. Gant is the CIO at Infinite Red. You have a bunch of interesting titles, and you seem to be writing a sci-fi novel. So probably you could give us the best introduction of like what you're currently doing. What's the latest version of that?
Yeah, so just as a tidbit, I'm a nerd in New Orleans, Louisiana. It's hard being a nerd there. I took a lot of me really just caring about writing weird stuff and showing it off to people around the world. And with that connection, I started joining groups around the world. So that got me all these weird titles. I'm in Toastmasters. I'm a DTM. I'm also in a bunch of, I'm in Microsoft MVP. Although I don't know if I'm still up to date with that. Sometimes they just mail me swag. Amazon community builders and Google developer experts, as well as Google champions. And then for a while, I was a Cloudinary MDE, but they discontinued that program. So I'm currently in whatever it currently is. It's a lot of fun, but I just enjoy traveling the world, meeting cool people, talking about cool technology, and then building amazing stuff.
That sounds amazing. Yeah, we met at the App.js, which was, of course, about React Native. We had a quick chat about 5 minutes, but I knew that you had to come onto the podcast because you're just a good storyteller, no matter what we talk about.
I appreciate that.
So we're definitely gonna get into that. But what are you really writing a sci-fi novel? Is that still true?
So here's what I did is I have like a weird idea that I'll feed every so often in my head. I have a story for a rom-com, this or that, and sometimes these things just show up and they're like, it's time. It is time, and that happened for the sci-fi novel because I was like, ChatGPT is getting more impressive. What if human writing is kind of like a thing of the past or something like that? And I was like, ooh, this actually kind of ties into my novel in weird ways and interesting things. And then it just started coming up. I was like, that's this year. I'm going to write the entire thing. So I started writing, and I have written 3 published books, but they're all tech books. And so what happens is I need to write this fiction, and I don't have fiction writing skills. So I start writing it sort of like a movie in a sense, and then start taking a writing class, and now I'm all in. Like, this is crazy town. I'm on chapter 7. I've got family members reading and giving me notes. They're like, I hope this character does this and does that. It's really fun. The only thing is my team members at Infinite Red, I don't know how excited they are because they're like, they have a full day's work. I'm like, let's talk about my novel. And I don't think that that's what they want to do with their days. Not everybody's ready to read a book that one of their people that they see every day is writing. So I bother my family members, but it's actually going really great. And I'm excited to kind of have this done. My goal is by the end of the year. If you're watching this and the year is over, then you say, Gant, where's that book?
I'm a bit jealous because really I had some ideas in the past as well, and I thought about writing. The problem is I'm from Germany, and so technically the best way to express myself would still be writing. I'm very fluent in English, but it's not my native language. Yeah. So I feel like I would have to write in German. I actually don't like German a lot as a language. So I kind of feel like I want to write in English, but then it would probably sound like a robot or something. So yeah, there's a little disconnect in my brain about that part, which holds me back.
Here's the worst and best part. When you write something, you're going to rewrite it, and then you're going to rewrite it again, and you're going to rewrite it again. I did it with tech books, and I'm doing it again with fiction. The one chapter that you will always write the most times is chapter 1. So that's a blessing and a curse. The curse is that you don't want to rewrite chapter 1, but the blessing is this: write it now. It's not going to be what you end up with. So my whole thing is just like with people learning coding or doing projects. If the passion's there, you'll learn the technology. We don't really care if like, oh, well, I haven't used that as a back end or something like that. No. If you're in tech and something comes out and you're like, that looks like that fits, I'm going to learn the things I need to in order to put that in place. That skill is applicable here as well. It's just like, oh, well, I'm going to have to redo this and remake it over and over and over again. So the trick is just be passionate about it and start doing it.
I will think about this. This sounds very like I should do it. I just need to find the right time for that. But
yeah,
I will do it. Speaking of chapters, your current chapter is at Infinite Red, and you're the CIO. Actually, I think this is the role I know the least about. So, what is your job at Infinite Red?
So it's really interesting. I was chief technology strategist when I was top employee at Infinite Red, and then I hit sort of a barrier where I was getting these offers from all these large companies, and I was driving Infinite Red forward. And one of the things I like to think of is that you're always managing upward as well as downward, but I had to find my next upward path. And one of the things that they said was, look, we want you in the core of this. We want you to help drive the ship. Would you be interested in buying in as a partner at the company? And I was like, absolutely. This is I found my tribe. I found the people who care. Yes. And they said, all right, give us all of your money. And I said, oh, okay, let's do it. So I did. Became part owner, and then just joined the executive branch of things. Now, when I joined executive branch of things, it's like, okay, where do we find you? As chief technology strategist, you were helping us know what's coming down the pipeline. So how about CIO is what Jamin says. I was like, no, like that doesn't make sense to me. He goes, no, it's Chief Innovation Officer. What you're going to do is that you're going to be at the forefront of, is this technology worth bringing back into Infinite Red? Are you going to explore this? Does this make sense? I was like, perfect. I love that. So lots of times when I'm at conferences and I'm looking at different talks about, we're going to start doing this, or we're going to start using that technology. I'm like, hey, that's great. And Jamin is our CTO, and he heads our team internally as well as looking outward at the same time. So when he and I sort of explore and work on these things together, it becomes part of the team. Coincidentally, we also help run sales and marketing at Infinite Red, which is the same hand-in-hand kind of thing, because we have our chances, like for marketing, we get this other part there, and then bring people in, and then sales and marketing have to agree, and then that's what brings stuff in. What this does, though, is our poor CEO, he gets all the worst jobs. He doesn't get to look out the window. He's also our CFO. And then he just stays here inside with the team. So, and he also runs ops. So it's really funny. It's like sales and marketing come in. They're like, this is great. Come in here. And they bring in the stuff. Everything works here. And then he has to manage it from there forward.
So he's like the worst of all worlds.
It does not pay to be CEO. But we have the best CEO possible because he does not complain about it. He's absolutely kind and friendly. He deals with everything. So I don't envy his job one bit, but I appreciate him.
Okay. I still need to bring in Jamin. I remember you were the second from Infinite Red, actually. Frank was here. You've been here, not Jamin. So Jamin, sorry if you listen to this. I promise at one point you're going to be here.
You got it. I will connect you up with him. He's a lot of fun, and let me tell you this: you're gonna have to be like, turn the nerd dial down. He is just a coding machine. When he works, he goes to 11 all day. It's so awesome to see him work. So be ready for that.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
But we're gonna actually look backward because you had a great conference just a couple of weeks ago, the Chain React. I wasn't there because traveling from Germany to the United States, it would take me probably some days to adapt and then get back, and just but maybe next time. Anyway, you gave the keynote at Chain React, and that piqued my curiosity once again because it was called the React Native Paradox.
Yeah.
So here we are, and the obvious question is, what is the React Native Paradox? And I know you're gonna give us like the short version of the talk. So for everyone, go check it out. The talk is available on YouTube. I watched it yesterday. It's definitely worth it, no matter what Gant is telling us now about the React Native Paradox.
I appreciate that. Yeah, like I said, I'm old. Look at this gray beard, right? One of the things I've seen so many different technologies come in. and try to do what React Native is actually doing. It's just wild to me because, well, first of all, I'm the keynote at the Chain React conference. Let's just talk public speaking for a second. When you're a keynote, you can't slam a bunch of code over somebody's face. Like you can, but they've got to be there for like, that exact code bit. They have to be like waiting with bated breath about that particular piece. But if you're just talking about React Native, unless you're unveiling some kind of aspect to it, you've got to set the tone for the next
you said
2 days.
Like the stage. It's not like the code hackathon stage you want to say. So.
You can't use up all the like the sugar in people's brains in the first talk and then be like, good luck for the next 2 days, because it's hard. If you go to conferences, you know what I'm talking about. You're like, you show up, you're ready, you got your notes, your laptops, and you're like, I'm not even going to open this. And then, probably by like after lunch, you're like, I'm going to check my email and listen to this talk. So it's the truth of how we are. But one of the things I like to do is my favorite keynotes actually set the feeling for the entire conference. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to engage 2 pieces here. I wanted to say why we were all there. And then I wanted to sort of get the developer side of the brain like rocking and rolling, which is why I use the word paradox. I used to play Portal. Oh my goodness. I love Portal so much. It's just great nerd brain stuff, right?
It is, yeah.
So what I wanted to do is I wanted to kind of get everybody thinking about, we've been hearing this story for over 10 years now. People are like, hey, I'm going to bring, web technology to mobile. And we watch it time and time and time again. And it just failed. It failed through big companies and small. And then next thing you know, it's sort of like the story of React. Like if you were around when React came out, you're like, why are you using the open source from Facebook?
Mm-hmm.
Why is this winning? It's crazy times.
I can actually really still remember that time. I sometimes forget a lot about things that I did. So I have tutorials on YouTube. If I watch them, I can't recall that I did that stuff, that I wrote that code. I don't know. So at that point, I was still buying into Angular and thought Angular is the coolest thing on earth. And then React came out, and at work, some people were talking about it, and I gave it a try, and I thought like, oh yeah, this is sweet. And I did a video on React Native even when it came out.
Nice.
Then I dropped it, but it was really like cool at that point. But
it was.
If you had asked me like in 10 years, is the NFL in 10 years building with React Native? I was like, you're kidding me?
Yeah, like no, and what Amazon's going to come out with something, or Microsoft's going to come out with something. What do you think they're going to do? Adopt the framework from Facebook? You think they're going to take that on and start putting that in their devices and their services? I don't think so. And then Angular is only going to improve. It's what the web would have been if they knew it was going to be for applications. Although I still don't understand Angular 1.0, and I don't think anyone ever did.
I know there was like state was probably the most used word in my code base with Angular, the dollar signs. And
oh my goodness.
Scope. Yeah. The scope was big. But you said it, and I think you had a quote in that talk. Other technologies should have won all along the way. And we can count like there was like PhoneGap, and later Cordova. We had Ionic, which actually is still present, and I was using like a big time fan of Ionic and Capacitor. And then there's the new stuff. I mean, the most obvious is Flutter probably, but there's so much also cooking under the hood. There are like things like Framework 7 or infinite amount of frameworks, but none of them really reached the critical mass or could like persist like React Native did.
Well, there's 2 things that I think that actually, so spoiler alert for the talk, there's 2 things that I think actually make the React Native possible. And the first thing was consistency, which a lot of other things had, of course. But consistency is an unperceptible like force in control. Like one of the things that we have with consistency is we have what we call the 8th wonder of the world, which is compounding interest. It's like you don't feel like it should win. You don't feel like it should do everything it does, but it does. And I use this paradox called the runner's paradox in there. It still blows everybody's minds. I had people come in and talk to me afterward, and they were like, is that really true? I was like, it goes way further than you think it does. And the paradox was, you have a runner who goes to a position X at a speed, let's say lambda, and goes back at that same speed lambda. Then you have a second runner who goes there at 2 lambda, but runs back at half lambda. So do they tie, or do they get there? Does one get there before the other? And like, you're like, okay, well, the average velocity of one was lambda lambda, and the other one's 2 lambda half lambda. So they get there at the same time, but it's not how it works. The math doesn't math there. It's actually the person who kept the consistent average velocity wins. And then I was like, no, that's not how it works. It is how it works. And in the talk, I say, if they ran there at 3 lambda, but ran back at half lambda, then still the person who was consistent wins. The thing that I didn't tell everybody, because I think that at that point they would have just not believed me, is that they could have ran over at 100 lambda and then ran back at half lambda and still lost. And it's like, what? It's just that inconsistency, that slow down that happens at the end. And feel free to ask ChatGPT to do the math for you and explain it. I'll explain it, but I'll put you to sleep. But what's funny is it's just the fact that that person ran consistently that did great. So the first part of the formula to me, that paradox shows you that consistency is a key part. And the second part is care to connect. Because when I go through the talk, I talk about it's essentially underdog, 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 all the way through. Because that big corporate sort of, this is what we have to do, keeps failing because it takes away what people care about. And you have to have the person who cares and wants to connect. So if they're consistent, they care, and they want to connect, that's where miracles happen. That's where we're all like, that's why React Native was cool. It was like, oh my God, this is so cool. It's actually working. It was made from a hackathon, a 3-day hackathon. And that's what they get React Native from. And now we're all using it. It's just mind-boggling to me. And that's what the paradox really is. It's like, who would have bet on this?
I definitely wouldn't have. And at that point, as I said, I was big into Angular, and I mean, that was like 2015 or so. So it was like Google versus Facebook at that point a bit.
Yeah.
And I think many people trusted or liked Google at that point.
Yeah.
And just the other day, I saw an interesting tweet that Zuck has completely changed his branding. Not only like Facebook to Meta, but there was like a whole campaign of rebranding himself. Like if you watch the pictures of him like in Curd, where he was like sitting like a robot. Yeah. And now he looks like the cool dude from next door, and he's fit and he's doing jujitsu or stuff like that. So do you think like the rebranding of Facebook and the general strategy they bought into helped to propel the spread of React and React Native over the years?
Actually, I think not. And here's the funniest part. I think that if we were to zoom into Meta, they probably, let's just, this is hypothetical, but this happens a lot. I'll just take another conference or another kind of like company thing and say, like, we'll send people to conferences and they'll learn and they'll do this stuff. And then someone comes along and they need to cut budget. Where's the first place they want to cut budget? Oh, we'll stop sending people to conferences and giving them per diems and do all these other parts. And then they're like, well, because we have our product and we could draw a straight line from this, we do this, and then this makes money, right? And then so if you go into Facebook, one of the things I say is if they add some new feature that can make another $1 off of every ad, right? That's $1 billion innovation, right? How many devs do you want to put on that? Tons. Oh, okay. We are maintaining, on this other side, we're maintaining this open source library that the world has adopted and they're set on. We use it internally, given that, but also we have to maintain how it looks outward, and we have all these other aspects to it. And plus, it's got a React Native framework, and companies like Meta's doing it, but like you have Amazon and Microsoft building all kinds of parts on it. Everybody's using it. We have to maintain this too. All right, if I put 100 devs on that, how much more money do we make? And they're like, okay, so it's zero, but hear me out, right? So I think like the branding connection there is like, yes, but that'll probably be more towards futuristic products that we see coming out of Meta. I think Zuckerberg probably is really more excited. If you see anything, he's doing videos about the VR experience, right? That makes sense. And those ideally bring you closer to a tangible line in finances and quality of life and future security, which Meta has to worry about. On the other side, I'd say like we have these nerds who care and they're consistent. And that thing is just staying there and growing by itself, but also somebody's got to pay that bill.
Right, yeah.
So I would say like they're probably at odds internally. And that's not a bad thing as long as everybody understands every company needs to have two departments that have conflicting interests. And we talked earlier about sales and marketing working together against, like ops, like, oh, this is what we promised. Oh, damn, now we have to do that, right? Mm-hmm. You have different departments that will have just a little bit of conflict with one another, and that's healthy. But I do think that open source at Meta is a success in a right that it shouldn't have been for them even.
That's an interesting point. Yeah. I mean, it's not, of course, not contributing to the money Facebook makes.
Right.
It's pretty obvious. Like, this is just fun, probably.
Yeah.
So we're glad they're still caring about it. But even if they wouldn't, at this point in the React world and the React Native ecosystem, I mean, probably someone else or the community would just overtake.
Yeah.
Which brings me to something else.
Yeah.
Which brings me to Flutter. So what would happen to Flutter? No. In your talk, you also quickly touched on Flutter. Mm-hmm. I see Flutter. It's an interesting technology in general. And of course, I don't want to say too bad things about it because there are people working on it. They're putting a lot of heart and effort into it, and we definitely don't want to like shit on the work of these people.
Not at all.
We just want to say that React Native is better. But so if I go to YouTube and under my videos, I get tons of comments usually when I do like comparisons that, oh, Flutter is so great. I can build apps so fast. And then you look into the surveys and you see, oh, Flutter has finally overtaken React Native and more people are building apps with Flutter. And then people tell me like, haven't you seen the stats? And I'm like, yeah, I've seen them, but so...
Yeah. I have a lot of opinions there.
Yeah, feel free to share them. What is going on here and where are we going?
Well, Google has the developer political machine set. When Google announces things, they know how to release it in a way that Meta has never seen.
But I've just seen a demo where they tried like Gemini 2 times and it just failed completely.
Oh, God,
Classic.
That's a totally, we get into AI. Trust me, I would love to talk about that next. But what's funny is like when Google releases something, it people jump on it. Like they have a great way of saying, hey, developer teams. I think they got this from Apple, right? They saw how Apple did it and they did it better. So like what was the Google Facebook competitor? Was it Google One or Google Plus or whatever it was?
Yeah.
See, we can't even remember.
Yeah.
But
it's better if we don't.
When it first came out, it was the Facebook killer, right? It was you believed it in your soul because Google was innovating in a way that was absolutely impressive that no one else was. And they were creating and moving mountains and you were seeing it with your eyes and you say, look, this is how things are going to be. And when you see that, their initial launch is just extremely impressive. The problem is the consistency isn't there with Google, right? I asked at the talk, I said, what's Google's main technology? Like what do you write code in if you're at Google? Is it Go? Is it Angular? Is it Dart? Is it what is it, COBOL they have now?
Yeah, they have a few funny things.
They have and you get all these different flavors, and they're internally competing. And then there's an entire Twitter account dedicated towards like Google killed it.
Yeah.
right? And I think like what just this not that long ago, there was a brand new giant death of an entire piece. And one of the things that happens is we are we diagnose and we bring a lot of external information. And so with that, Google's got its hands in way too many pies. And it starts to make you say, hey, I've I've loved everything you've done 10 times now. 5 of those are gone. So when they come out with Flutter and you see like they're giving it time at their main conference, they're doing these other parts, you're like, okay, I love this. I hope it lives. And the trick is you can have, it's not a democracy. You can have 99% of people hope that it lives, but if it doesn't make $2 million when it was supposed to make, and it only makes $1 million, then they're like, well, why are we spending time with this? And they directly will kind of come cut that. And so one of the things I find that's most interesting is that Google's sort of overzealous sort of adoption like culture starts to work against it at some point because the infrastructure doesn't continue to scale. And at the second thing is like that kills consistency, which actually kills all the miracles that are supposed to be coming out of there. You know, if they've got a cool, like underrated technology, like, oh, I can't wait to jump on this. You have to say, uh, am I wasting my time or not? You know, and I love Google. Like I said, I've got, you know, Google Developer Expert. I wrote a book on a Google technology because it's super amazing. So TensorFlow JS and like an AI, which, like I said, I would love to talk more about at any time.
Yeah.
But the trick to me is that they've got to learn that this is bad for business for them. It doesn't matter how great you are at getting people into your technology. If you have a history and it's not, it's a visible history backwards, letting go of stuff, it's going to be bad. Just when they had all the layoffs, people were like, is the Flutter department still there? And Google goes quiet. And you're like, well, what am I going to do? Now I'm going to work on historical data. And so we diagnose it ourselves as developers. We're smart people and we're caring people, and we don't want to waste our time.
I mean, still to this day, people are still pissed over the fact that like Angular went to Angular 2 and basically everything changed. Like you can still read this in comments from people that bring it up against Angular. So yeah, every new project that Google kills just adds up to the pile of things they killed over the. But besides the like existing worry that Flutter might just be killed at some point, are there any other things that speak clearly against it? Because as I said, like in many ratings, in surveys, you're going to see that it's quite popular. Is this just like the marketing of Google working? And the marketing, honestly, the docs are great. Like they got the docs. You are coming from here. You are coming from there. And I talked to someone from Expo who said like, Google and Flutter is investing heavily, for example, in India, in people, in like the people that are just becoming developers. So they're like building up the next generation of developers to initially use Dart and Flutter. Is that the reason that it's so popular, or what's behind this?
Well, I mean, the system, they've got to an expertise. And so finding the right market and bringing those people, and especially those people, think about this. They don't realize that the consistency is bad. They're going to come in. But at the same point, if Flutter goes away, those people aren't going to take it on and be like, no, it's not going away. We're keeping it. We're going to have it. This is a great scenario that you brought up. Let's say that we teach 3 million people in India. And for a year, we get them to become experts in Flutter. If Flutter goes away, do you think they're going to take that technology on? Or do you think they're going to do what happens whenever a junior developer joins a company for a year, gets their resume built up, and then says, hey, look, I was really good at this for a year, and then they job hop to the next thing, and they say, look at me, I'm capable of learning new technologies, right? So if you brought in a junior dev and you train them up for a year and they leave, the companies, by the way, that usually sucks for the company because they just spent a year training somebody, and then now they're going to get a job for a much higher salary because they did all the work training them and they went somewhere else. But you've got these people, they learned Flutter and then they move on. If you know Dart, how hard is it to learn TypeScript? Not hard at all. Like you'd be like, oh, okay, I get it, right? Does this apply to everything else in the world? Okay, now I really like TypeScript. It's not just stuck on one language. Now, let's take that same scenario and run it through React Native. Okay. Meta says, we're letting go. We can't do React Native. Okay. Well, at the same time, it's been open source. It's got tons of contributors, and it's been continuing to be invested in by Microsoft and Amazon and other people in the Fortune 100s. And they're not only the people who use this, but they're in the build cycles. They're in the release meetings for React Native. They're running the meetings. It is completely capable that Meta could say, we're going to stop taking care of this, and the community could absolutely keep it going. Now, they would hate it. It would suck. But also, you don't see them saying like, well, I guess we're just going to stop using this and move on and get a new job. No, they have entire hardware that's dedicated to utilizing these things. Now, at the same time, Meta is invested in itself. The entire system is running on their own technology. They need to see it succeed, whether they like it or not. They would have to go out of business for this to happen. Whereas Google could just say, today this, right? So for that scenario, like the placement's good, but in a third dimension, the problem actually breaks down. And I see this, like, there's like really cool in war tactics. There's some that work, they look equally for a certain amount of time. But what happens is they have a second generation problem. And the trick is, if there's a long war between two things, the second generation problem loses people the war. It's crazy. For these longer wars, there's different tactics, there's different styles. And so I'd say it's like technology is the long war. Technology is a tactic that you have to be thinking multi-generational. Can people do it when you're not in the room? Same thing for companies. And I think that, if you take a look at that, there's one clear winner.
COBOL.
Yes. Yes. COBOL will never die.
Nobody
will touch it. COBOL or death.
This is so scary when you notice that the stuff is still writing from 70 years ago in banks. Nobody tries to touch it.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I've run into, so I worked at an insurance company, and first graduated. I got a computer science degree, which I do not recommend. And then I was in New Orleans, so I had to find a job. There's no tech here, and so I had a job at an insurance company in their tech department, and there was just this one machine. You don't touch that machine. It is running IBM style assembly, and that's it. And if you want to touch it, good luck. No one's going to let you touch it.
Scary.
Yeah.
So we talked about the dead end of Flutter and the past. Let's switch over to the future, because I saw you introduced a pretty nice React Native MLKit. So we're switching like a hard cut from things that suck to things that are really good.
Yeah.
So I think you introduced this at your App.js talk, which I will also put in the links. You were the last to talk. That is a pretty tough spot. We talked about it before because people were already drinking beer and making fun of every session.
Yeah. If you're closing talk, it's totally different style. So for Chain React, keynote, set the mood. For App.js, last talk on last day, you have to seal the mood, right? It's your job.
It can
just
basically
to keep
be only pictures, no text, right?
Right.
It's nobody wants to read, no more facts. I've seen enough. React Native is the next big thing. Yeah, I get it. So your talk was about AI, and that it was about MLKit and AI.
Yeah.
So the React Native MLKit, I actually haven't tried it yet. It looks cool. It actually has a cool graphic on its repository.
Thank you.
Did you do it? Oh,
yes,
that's cool. Yeah. It's pretty wild. So what is this MLKit? What can we do with that repository?
So I think we're going to see a push to AI to devices, right? We've got large language models. They can't fit on a phone. We got stuff, but we have some things that have been fitting on a phone just fine. And there are smaller models that make sense. And why would you push it down to the phone? Well, same reason that we used to have all back-end server code, and then we decided, hey, let's push some of this to JavaScript. Let's push a little bit of this to the front end. And then we see like the vicissitudes of like what happens. We have the back end, then let's JavaScript. Let's go back to Rails. Okay, now let's go to a React framework. Let's render some of this stuff on the back end. That's like we just. I'm old, man. This is just I see the same damn things. And I talk to people older than me, and they're like, "Yeah, dude, welcome to the club. We used to have one server with shell terminals, and then we pushed it to PCs, and it's like, okay, right, it's the same thing over and over again, right?" I'm on the merry-go-round. I finally see it. But what happens is we're going to see the same thing with AI, right? You don't want to pay for every single processing of an image. Like, so if I wanted to do something fast as well or offline, I need to be able to process that information directly on the device. So we're seeing the world wake up to AI, and then we're going to put some more and more stuff on the phone, like smart replies, right? There's no reason I need to go hit the server to ask it whether I should say LOL or thanks, things like that. It can give me the best 5 common responses. I could choose to use it or not, just like LinkedIn or other places. And then I could also do other things like image detection, making sure that decency checking on images, things like that, making sure if I got someone texted me an image, it's not a person on it or sitting there. It's like, that's an indecent image, and hits cancel. It should be like, hey, we're 95% sure that you should not unblur this image, but feel free if you really want to, things like that. Run all that stuff on devices, face detection, things like that. The trick is I do think LLMs will become smaller LMs and then eventually get further and further onto on-chip device stuff. So that's the future to me. Like that's the innovation officer saying, like, I think we're going to see some really cool stuff continue to get on phones. So I want to show you how to do that in React Native, right? And one of the things that happens is I have a choice. I could build entire frameworks that work on both or something like that. But one of the things about MLKit is that is currently and not canceled Google architecture, where they have claimed, here, we'll take care of a lot of the hard stuff for you and making sure that this is effective on iOS and Android. But they didn't have a React Native wrapper. So we started wrapping in React Native, and that was my demo at the end, is doing magic eraser, taking pictures of an image and having it unskew, changing the capacity. Like, there's a pipeline of ML models that you think are advanced and complicated, but at the end of the day, it was like 10 lines of code, because it was the last talk, right? So 10 lines of code, and then I'm doing like AI magic on stage in a live demo. I was like, yeah, here you go. And I think that's really fun. That plus a bunch of Star Wars nerd references.
Yeah, the talk is definitely watch-worthy as well. So that repository is basically the showcase for the React Native MLKit core library from Infinite Red.
Yes.
Is that? And the MLKit face detection library.
Yeah. So what's happening is MLKit is a Google initiative. And what happens is they don't have React Native wrappers. So what we've done is we've taken, as they have new features, we'll wrap them in React Native and put it there. So let's say tomorrow you needed to do pose detection, right? You need to make sure that people are working out at home, and you need to do it in React Native. So you need to know that a person is like doing their jumping jacks, okay? You're like, all right, I need to do pose detection on the phone. Well, I can go do it from scratch, or I can go grab the MLKit pose detection. And they can say, hey, did Infinite Red wrap this yet? So that I can just do it in 10 lines of code at the end of a talk while drinking beer.
Is there like a Heroku app? Did Infinite Red wrap this yet? You can check for.
Yeah, I love that. And it just says no. But so what we have is you say like, oh, they didn't. Well, for that one, we haven't wrapped it yet, right? But you have 4 or 5 examples of like exactly how to go ahead and do it. Like, because we've done face, we've done object detection.
Document scanner, image labeling.
Exactly. So we've done that. So you could go ahead and contribute back and then do it. Or you could just hire us and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up real fast. That's fine too. And then the last thing is, like, as people need this, we will continue to do it in open source style. So let's say we did have a client that needed pose detection and actually did check if people were working out. So I did actually write that app, but I did it before this was available, and so I did all the work. Right, it's just the same thing. Like my story at app.js, we had to do it without a library, and we did all the math ourselves. But now what happens is we needed to do it tomorrow, we would just go ahead and create the MLKit wrapper for it, and then from then on, it's just 10 lines of code.
Yeah, I'm looking at the code for face detection. It's like the whole thing looks like 70 lines of code with a bunch of types in between.
Yeah, it's not terribly complicated. We're set, and it works with Expo, so it's really nice. It's easy to get all up and running real fast. And one of the things I like most about it is because like these things are superpowers, man. Like, if you've been coding for a while, it's hard to see something new. It's like nice to see do something that you've never done before. Like, okay, I've got a flash list, like, or I've got this list of information. Like, I've done that a million times now. But if I've got to like find points of a person's face and tell them whether they're smiling or not, that sounds pretty cool. I'll do that tomorrow.
Definitely sounds like a tutorial I should do on YouTube.
Yeah. Hey, you've got our help. Look, we'll help you out with it.
I was just looking at MLKit on the Google page. So for example, cool. Like text recognition. Yeah. This is something you haven't wrapped yet, I think.
Not yet. Correct. Yeah.
Correct. So if you would wrap this and I would use your library, is this like running totally offline on my device and I wouldn't pay Google for it?
Correct. It's free.
Because I tried text recognition with OpenAI. Like you can set the image, you get the text back. It works pretty good. But this is really just on device. How fast is it?
Oh, super fast. So these things, you could probably get close to 60 frames per second on your video. Obviously, a great demo I would love to see is with React Native Vision camera, frame processor, coming in and pulling in and doing an MLKit model and then getting the results back. And then maybe seeing like what the performances of each of these models are. But we did pose detection without all this stuff at like 30 frames per second. And it was really cool. So I would love to see what people could get to if they actually optimized it even further.
Wasn't there like a showcase with Vision camera where Mark did something with like points on his face or blur his face? Was that also with MLKit or?
I don't know if he used MLKit for that one or not. He probably used the same exact model though. So MLKit is this great idea of sort of adding a framework to not having to think too much about the implementing a AI model. My book on TensorFlow.js is all about implementing the AI models. But you could basically abstract that.
Is the part that really scares me, by the way. We're going to come back to that in a second.
That's why I think like this framework for app developer sort of kind of came about, right? Like we'll handle all that part for you. We'll just make it easier and bring it to you so that you're like, hey, this is what's happening. But the model that's underneath there is going to be a TF Lite model. And so what that's doing is, sorry if I lose anybody, but that's going to do a face mesh, which a face mesh gives you a 3-dimensional set of like maybe 132 points inside space so that you could wrap something or transform something to somebody's face for like adding like a 3D graphic or painting somebody's face or something in real time,
like
or adding features
style. Like,
yeah. So if you can get that real time sort of where those dots are, then you know exactly how to modify it in order to do whatever kind of effect, like to make somebody older or things like that. And so that is face mesh detection. The trick is people, I think, just don't know what models allow you to do what cool features. And I think there's a lot of information to like bring the people there and saying like, well, if you can get the points of somebody's face, what can you do with that? You can add, the face mesh is great for a 3-dimensional thing. But if I just want to tell if you're happy or sad, for instance, if I'm just checking sentiment analysis, I only need like a lot fewer points, or if I just needed to see where your eyes are looking, even fewer points, right? So they even have smaller models that are faster that do just those kinds of things. Now, goes into ethics right away. It's just like, wait a second, you're looking at where my eyes are looking. It'd be freaking amazing if you're on device on a kiosk and you want to see whether the ads are cool or something like that. But do you have the right to that information? Does that person consent to being recorded? Look, that's where it goes crazy for me, right? I don't know if any of that stuff's right. I'm just the mad scientist who's like, this is super cool. But at the same time, I think it is important that we know those things happen so we can feel uncomfortable if we see somebody using it a little too much and be in that room to have that discussion. Truth is, if only a few people who have all the money are making those decisions, the ethics might not be on our side. So I do want more people knowing about it.
Absolutely. And I was just looking through the stuff here on MLKit. There's a lot of beta stuff like face mesh detection, pose detection, selfie segmentation, subject segmentation. Many libraries for infinite red to wrap. So if you want infinite wrap to wrap it, leave a comment if you're on YouTube or tweet at Gant on X. And he will personally wrap it.
Yeah, I actually wake up with ideas of what to do with some of these libraries. I was like, if you could take the person out, you could like do this stereoscopic thing with them in the background. It's like, oh my God, is anybody doing that? Like, stop it. You have to go to a meeting.
You have to work.
Now. Yeah.
You have to build a login page. Yeah, I know that. The MLKit. Okay, where did I stop?
It does blow you away. So we have what I think is like a very interesting problem. There's this like old stupid story about this donkey in the desert that's hungry and thirsty, and there's food on one side and thirst on the other, and it doesn't know which one to do first, so it just dies. And that's kind of like where we all are with AI, except for there's 10,000 choices around us, and you don't know which ones you should be going towards.
Absolutely.
My thing is just try. Like if you try it, if you took one of those libraries and said, "What could I do with this?" Like it would be really amazing.
It's so crazy. I tried OpenAI and a few easy things, and all of that is cool. And then you go to YouTube, and I had Nader Debit here on the podcast as well. He did some cool videos, and I opened one of his videos, and it was like, build an Expo app with and I didn't recognize any of these words. And I'm like, what is going on in this space? Like building an AI app with there are so many things coming on. It's not just like I don't even understand hugging faces or what this is like wrapping.
That part sucks. Can I just say, like, as developers, like we have this whole thing with our love of TLAs, which are 3-letter acronyms. And we'll throw them around like everybody knows what the hell we're talking about, and it just feels weird. One of the things I like to do is I want to be able to at any point dive down and explain stuff. With our team, we talk a lot about AI. We have a lunch and learn Wednesdays, or there's no lunch. We just learn on Wednesdays, and then everybody goes to lunch because we're remote, right? So what happens is, but we have this sort of workshopping session, and I really love that I kind of come in with different problems and try to explain it to them. Like, what is an LLM? Like, why is it suddenly cool? What technology happened? What paper was published in 2019 that changed this? And did they know it would do it? And how did it work? And you sort of see that in a lot of my talks. I could be criticized as a person who doesn't do enough tech in their talks, but the trick is I don't think people go to a conference talk to get someone to read the docs to them. I just don't think that's what they want. They want to they want to walk away from your talk with 1 to 3 points that they feel are like, hey, I feel like I could go approach this now. And I think that's what's happening in AI is that people are going in and they say, like, here's the thing. And buzzword, because it's been PhDs and master degrees the whole way along, and that's how they speak to each other. But as app developers, the first thing we have to do is understand the business logic. If you don't understand the business logic, then you must be a junior app developer, because they gave you some components to make without you knowing how those are going to tie in, right? The first thing we have to know is why we're doing something. And if we skip that for each other, it starts to feel like unapproachable. I'm classically asking the dumbest question in the room now. And it's not because I've become the dumbest person in the room. It's just simply because I realize now how important it is to make someone answer that question in front of everybody. And that tells you what their intention was with the entire meeting anyway.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to ask one last dumb question because you've wrote a whole book on TensorFlow, and just hearing the word usually like I think I have an idea what it means, but at the same time I couldn't explain it in like with
I got
a
you.
few sentences. So to use MLKit and all the cool stuff we talked about 10 minutes ago, do I need to understand TensorFlow? No, that is the good news.
Yeah,
but still, what is it like? And
you got it.
In like wrap up your book in about like 2 minutes.
Yeah, you got it.
What is it?
So what happens is we started to figure out that neural networks actually work, right? And there's this concept for a while that if we have this neural connected network that you run math through it, numbers go in, numbers come out, and it actually does work. You're like, oh, that's cool. And then people started to do adjustments to it, and you start to see it actually get close to human level stuff. And like, this is amazing. In 2012, if you write all the code to do this math that does high school math to figure out the answer, but you train it using college math, it uses calculus going backwards, then this thing works. Well, at some point, you kind of have to like put an abstract layer on top of that. We saw this, like assembly was cool. Let's put C on top of assembly, right? Like I don't want to think about assembly all the time. I want to think about the problem I'm solving. So I told you I'm old. So what happens is, let's write something that does all the math. And so that became frameworks. Frameworks are PyTorch and TensorFlow, right? The two most popular ones that are out there. So you don't have to write that from scratch. Now, if you go take Andrew Ng's course from Stanford in 2012, you're going to write the calculus and you're going to understand it. You're going to do all that part. But you don't need to do that. There's these great frameworks that take on the stabilized enough for us to go ahead and have a framework. Well, PyTorch and TensorFlow are amazing. Now I can go ahead and tell it, hey, here's the data, do the math on it, and then give me like the model that works later on. And then it gives it to you and you're like, okay, and I plug it in. As long as you could get those things back into numbers and shove it through the system, it just gives you answers. Here's what's in this image. Here's where this is in this image. Here's 10 things in this image. And their classes 5, 6, and 7, 8 that we found there. Oh, what did those go to? Okay. Then you've got like, all right, let's start implementing these cool things. Well, I think that this jumping off point is kind of like a little scary for some people. And I think that that's why we're seeing things like MLKit. MLKit, for when you do image capture, it's running 4 or 5 different models to figure out where a square is. That's one model. To go ahead and skew it back. That's actually not a model, but that's math. And then to sort of optimize and run filters on the image and get it to the best point, to magic erase pieces off of there, like a coffee stain. That's another model. But we're thinking in app developers. We're the business logic. I want to take an image, I want to clean it up, and I want to send it on, right? Do you have your insurance card? Yes. We don't want to make the people take great photography photos. We want them to take a terrible photo. We want to skew it back in, make sure it's readable. We can recognize text on it. We want to run 5 or 6 models on this before we say this is okay. Well, that's this layer on top. And so MLKit's going to be like, hey, look, I want to be able to do these other pieces to it and make sure I actually get this experience and make sure I can actually deal with this so I can add features to my product, which is my whole damn job. You know, that's what I was hired to do, is to add this feature, not go learn linear algebra, right?
Yeah.
And so I think what's great is that each time you get one of these layers, you can choose, but just like web. And I know you said 2 minutes, I'm probably at 10. But just like web, the further down you understand, the better you're going to be at it. It's not necessary, but it'll make you just a little bit better. So don't shy away from it, but also don't feel like that it's a barrier. That's it.
So TensorFlow basically helps me to create these models that will be then used with MLKit,
or just to consume and use them. There's a model that exists, and you just want to implement. Someone else trained it and did all the stuff, and all you want to do is consume it and actually get the output of it. Like, hey, this one makes your face look like it's like ages
an orange.
You. Yeah, it makes it look like an orange. Okay, I take the image, I turn it into numbers, I put it through here, I get numbers, and I turn that back into an image. And then it just did its magic. And I did that in the frame processor and React Native Vision camera, and I'm good.
That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
And once again, the great libraries, React Native Vision Camera, Mark Rosavi, thanks for that one.
Yeah.
It's an epic one.
Very cool.
So we're coming to the end of this. I have two questions. One is pretty easy. The other one is probably also short. So you talked about the Learn and Not Lunch Wednesdays at Infinite Red. And so what is currently going on with AI? What is Infinite Red thinking and talking about AI, and you as a CIO? What do you think it's going on in the next time with AI, and where should we keep an eye on?
It's going to start going closer and closer to devices, and we're going to keep seeing innovation. The cat's out the bag. It's not a flash in the pan. It's not Bitcoin, or it's not any of those other pieces there. We're going to continue to see innovation, and we knew this was coming. A lot of companies have been investing in it for a while. Some of them just investing as soon as somebody says AI, because they just knew what was coming. The gold rush isn't over. It's honestly just starting. So I would say AI on devices, AI on server, AI and just sort of as a standard of living is coming to all of our web and mobile projects.
That's interesting. Yeah, I kind of feel the same in terms of just building my own AI apps. I'm honestly a bit scared, especially after the last thing Apple launched, AI, because it killed so many other applications, and 95% of applications are just wrappers around the OpenAI API. So it's hard to be not unique, but to do something of real value in the AI world right now.
I understand that. And so what I'll say is that stop thinking of it as that you need to come up with a new AI project or the new AI feature. So the trick is, don't think of it that way. Think inside there. What are those? Don't think of an AI product. Think of how AI should be a feature in your existing project or your existing product. What service can you now add that actually increases the quality of life? And there's a lot of people jamming AI into things and making it worse, right?
Yeah.
We are going to respond to the things where they add it and they make it better. And that's the hard part for a lot of people. It's how do I make things better? How do I come up with this concept that made my customer service experience better? And it's easy to think of it in terrible ways where, let's say my chatbot, I fired my whole department and now it's just a chatbot, and you're like, representative. And it's never, I'm just a chatbot. Would you like to go ahead and hack me? That's a terrible experience. But let's say that I went to a website and I was like, how many pairs of glasses do y'all sell? And they're like, 10,000. I was like, oh my God, I don't know where to start. I was like, well, how would you like your own private concierge? Answer some questions. Are you looking for sport? Are you looking for around work? Do you like light glasses or heavy? And then it's okay, now given that, here's our recommendation engine. Here's a totally different AI model. Here's some suggestions. Here's your price range. Would you like to do a virtual try on? Yeah, I love it. I hate it. You Tinder swipe your glasses, and it's we added those to the cart for you. Feel free. That's the reason we walk into a store, is because we want that high level of customer care. So if you're increasing the quality of life using AI, then all those features are going to stick around. The problem is people are trying to think of how do I jam things into places rather than thinking well, how could we improve it?
Love that point of view. We'll definitely think about it. I do have one good application myself.
Nice.
So probably I can spice it up with some AI, maybe.
Yeah.
But anyway, or maybe I'm going to write a book. I'm still torn between the two.
Why not?
I need
both?
to build. Why not both? Yeah, and then I play the World of Warcraft add-on, and then I travel around the world, of course, and play with my daughter. The day has 40 hours. Yeah, the life of an adult is sometimes hard.
So hard, man.
I sometimes wish I was 5 years old and just enjoy having a new toy and playing with it.
I have recently rediscovered playing guitar for the past 2 years.
Nice.
And I love it. And basically, that's how I start all my mornings. It's not for anybody. It's not plugged in. It's an acoustic guitar. It's like campfire Gant every morning. And it's one of my favorite times of the day.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Thank you so much for all you've shared today, Gant.
Got it.
Where can people find out more about you?
Oh, absolutely. So I'm at Gant Laborde on Twitter, gantlaborde.com on the website. But of course, you can go to infinite.red and see my entire team. You probably have met them at a conference or you've seen them around different places. And we're speaking at, I spoke at App.js, but we're going to have Mazen, who's from our podcast. He'll be speaking at React Universe in Poland. Our team's all over the place, and there's some of the nicest, friendliest people. We only hire the nicest. So if you see any of them, feel free to walk up to them and start talking to them. They'll tuck your ear off.
I could definitely agree. So far, the two that I've met have been incredible. Thank you again, awesome. And thank you, Frank. On top of that, everyone, once again, all the talks from Chain React. I think all the 100%.
Talks, right? They're all set.
All the talks. All are available on YouTube. Go watch them. Is there anything that sticks out? Anything we definitely have to watch beside your keynote? Or are all of them so great?
Let's see. I have. Beryl did a talk. And it was just one of my favorites, but it's just because of her personality. I would scan the topics to find ones that work specifically for you. I'm more of like a charisma based, like I said, I want 1 to 3 points out of a talk, and I want to be like, yeah, I'm going to do that. So I'm a little more geared towards
another good use of AI. Yeah. Put in what you want to get out of a talk, and then I would recommend a Chain React talk.
Yeah.
Pitch that to Jamin. Thanks, Jamin. Thank you again. It was a pleasure to talk to you, and all the best for the future. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining today's episode. My goal is to share interesting stories and insights into the world of React Native development. If you enjoy this show, please subscribe to the show on YouTube, Apple, or Spotify. And on Spotify and Apple, you can leave up to a 5-star review. Because podcasts, and especially niche podcasts like this, are hard to find, subscribing and leaving a review does help me a lot. On top of that, check out my React Native courses on galaxies.dev that cover a variety of topics from getting started to building and publishing your mobile app. Finally, you can share today's episode with a friend or colleague who would enjoy the topic of the show. If you have any questions or ideas for future episodes, find me on X or leave a comment on YouTube. And last but not least, thank you for listening and happy coding, Simon.